trying to make these videos for years. Like, it's been a while. Being a mom makes it a little bit difficult to do things that I want to do. But here I am, and I'm going to film my labor and delivery story for you. So this is actually going to be in 2 parts. I'm going to talk about leading up to going into labor and then the actual birth. So during my pregnancy with our daughter, I watched hundreds of videos. I read thousands of blogs about natural birth because we had planned on going completely natural this time. I do want to back up and say that we have a little boy who is almost 3. With him, I had an awesome epidural birth, so I'm not bashing epidurals in any way. I feel like they're great if that's what you want to do. I had a really great experience with the epidural. The only bad thing about my son's birth was the recovery. And I've done a lot of research, and a lot of people said with all natural births, you recover a lot easier and you're less likely to have postpartum depression and a lot of other reasons. So this time I decided to take the leap and just try to go completely medicine-free. So the first thing I did when we found out that we were pregnant, basically I was like 14 weeks and I went ahead and hired a doula. Now the doula that we hired is a pregnancy and labor and postpartum doula. And she's someone that I kind of know personally, so it was really nice to be, with someone that I'm comfortable with. So if you plan on having a natural birth, I highly, highly recommend getting a doula. I took Bradley Method childbirth classes here that were offered in our town. They were really beneficial. They taught a lot on breastfeeding, just a lot of information, and if you have those in your area, you should definitely look into them. It was a 12-week course. We had a class every Tuesday for 2 hours, and it was awesome. It was very, very, very educational. And I feel like I may not have gone completely through with a natural birth if I hadn't have taken those classes and known so much about everything. Not everything, but you know what I mean. So I had a really good pregnancy. We didn't have any issues with her. Since I did do a lot of research, one thing that stuck in my mind for some reason was hemorrhaging. I don't know why, but it just that was something I was really scared about when it came to giving birth. As the closer I got to our due date, the less worried I was, and so it kind of got pushed to the back of my mind. So whenever I had it was 35-week and 6-day appointment, he did the strep B test, and he also checked me. I was 1 centimeter, completely thick though. I wasn't E-faced at all, which was fine because I was super excited just to be 1 centimeter at almost 36 weeks. The next appointment was the following week at 37 weeks. Well, it was almost 37 weeks. It was 36 weeks and 5 days. So it was 2 days before turning 37 weeks. And he did the check, and I feel like that check triggered some contractions. But at that point, I was 2 centimeters and 50% E-faced. So I was really excited that the little bit of pain that I'd been in the past week was doing something. And that night, I actually had an engagement session because I'm a photographer. And I told the couple, because I had contractions that day, I was like, I've been having contractions all day. I could go into labor and have a baby right here. Just kidding. But I did tell them I was having contractions. And so I did the session, and then that night I picked up my son and we went to Sonic. And it was probably like 10 o'clock. And I noticed I was having contractions every 5 minutes, which was like the most I've ever had, other than being induced with my son. And so it was every 5 minutes, and I was keeping track of them, and then by the time I went to bed, they stopped. So I was kind of bummed that the next day they didn't really happen that much. So that Friday, I didn't really have any contractions, and then I edited a session, and I was bouncing on my bouncy ball, and I did get a few cramps, and my husband said, you need to stop bouncing on that ball before you go into labor, because we're not ready, because we still had a lot to do around the house. And I'm like, yeah. And he demanded that we watch a movie that night. I really did not want to watch a movie, but we decided to sit down and watch a movie. And during the movie, of course, I couldn't focus on anything other than when am I going to go into labor, because when you're that far along, that's all you can think about. So I was texting my best friend about it all, and then I decided to get up and go to the restroom, and when I wiped, there was a little bit of blood. And I was like, oh my gosh. Could I be like about to go into labor? Because I thought it was a piece of my mucus plug. And then I decided to Google it, like always, and it said that not to get your hopes up if you lose your mucus plug because it can grow back. So, I was kind of bummed. About probably an hour later, I went back to the restroom, and whenever I went, I heard like a kerplump sound, and so I got up, I was like, what was that? And it was a huge, like that big piece of blood, and it was just really gross. And I was like, that is my whole mucus plug. There's no way that that's not the whole thing. And so I was starting to get really excited, but I wasn't having any contractions. And we had a lot to do that weekend to get done around the house before we're baby ready anyway. And so I was like, well, maybe it just means it'll be within the next week. So I texted my best friend, like always, and she was like, I bet she's going to be here this weekend before Monday. I'm like, no, I think it'll be within the next week, but not this weekend. So then we decided to go to bed because my husband was going to work overtime the next day, which was Saturday. So we went to bed at about 11 o'clock, and my little boy sleeps with us. He sleeps in between us. Bad habit, I know, but whatever. So he was sleeping between us, and I was tossing and turning. That night and the night before that, I slept horribly. Like, I couldn't get comfortable, and I even thought about sleeping on the couch. The thought of the couch was way more comforting than the bed. So I considered it. It's a good thing I didn't, though. And my husband was awake on his phone. I was finally dozing off, and a contraction woke me up. Like, it hurt to where it actually woke me up out of a dead sleep. And I was like, well, that was strange. And so I texted my friend, and I was like, a contraction just woke me up. And then I went back to sleep. Well, I kind of dozed. I don't know if it was sleep or if I was just, like, trying too hard, but I felt like I was starting to doze. So I started to doze, and it was like a rubber band had popped inside my stomach. And it was just like, water just everywhere. And it sounded like water, like a waterfall had just, like, fallen out of the ceiling. And so I jump up, and I'm like, Trey, my water broke. My water broke. And he's like, what? And we're freaking out. Like, I run to the bathroom, and instead of sitting down on the toilet, you know, without making a mess, I'm just standing there letting it get everywhere. It splattered on the walls. It was so bad. And so we're freaking out, and our son wakes up, and he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, you need to call your mom and get Oliver next door. And I called my doula. So I'm going to stop it there because I'm going to make this way too long probably. So I'm going to link down the next video below, and this next video is going to be the actual labor and delivery. So be sure to check it out.